Hey, Brandon here. This is channeled messages on December 2024. How are you doing? I've got channel messages that I channeled through ahead of time for my spirit guides, the angels, and source for you. And I'll also be flowing with any additional information my spirit guides, the angels, and source bring through while we're reading through these. And I'll also work with my intuition and all that as well. So before we get started on what came through ahead of time, they're showing me a lightning bug to start this one here. And let me see what the message is with this one. So there is a message about like clear redirection happening. So not like confusing redirection. It's more like you have clarity that brings redirection is something that's an energy that's showing up for this month for this crowd and potentially for more people beyond this crowd as well. It is kind of a world energy that's there for this message for a lot of different people. So you might see this with friends and partners and other people as well. Beyond that, though, here, there is a message of like the way being lit up for you more. I realized that was a channel messages that I believe that came through for November as well. So I'm getting it's ramping up more. It's going to be like more there, like for the road ahead and even in the months ahead. So it's kind of an energy that's here to stay as more things get lit up for you and the way becomes clearer, is what they're showing me as well. The other thing with the lightning bug is sometimes what they show me is like a landing strip, like at an airport, for example. And like the lightning bugs are kind of lining up to form this like series of blinking lights that's like land here. So let me see what's going on with that here. Cool message is like there are potentially a lot of things materializing for you and like landing, like manifestations landing, like new jobs is something I'm hearing for some of you, probably not every single one of you. Uh, Things you're hoping for landing is something I'm getting. So there are certain things like materializing to help you for your path forward that maybe it's been hard to materialize in the past, or for some of you, it's actually just going to be a surprise, even. It's like a surprise manifestation, or you didn't see it coming and the universe just does something for you. And you're like, oh, this, I wouldn't ever use the phrase like this never happens, because what are you creating when you say that? But you could, maybe that'll be like a reaction some of you have, is like you might think that, oh, that never happens. And maybe it's time to catch that and be like, oh, what will it take for more of that to show up every time something good happens, instead of, something like that. Anyhow, here, that's kind of what Lightning Bug is saying. It's a number of different messages, and to me, it seems like it's all leaning positive, and I'm getting it's positive. So that's actually really great here. So they'd like me to start with number one. They're showing me number uno here, and they're saying that. So this is a light month, is the first channel message that came through, and I'll read this here. Things are on a trajectory to keep getting lighter. You might not think this or see this as true for every area of the world. However, and long term, it probably is, even if you don't see it immediately. That's a different story, though. However, for you, it can be true that things are getting lighter and on a trajectory to keep getting lighter. And I would invite that in. Focus on lightness and watch your world expand. The lighter you get, the lighter things get. There is an energy of lightness coming in much stronger this month, and it's waking those on earth up to what's possible. Allow the lightness and flourish. So, can you move towards what is light to you this month, maybe more strongly than before? And can you commit to that maybe? If you're someone who tracks energy, you're energy sensitive, you work with your awareness with energy, and you can perceive your different choices and what they will create. Can you actually follow that this time? Is what, if you don't do that, is what I'm hearing, and begin to create a lighter life and make choices that compound on each other to create things as lighter or better for you. So for example, um, let's say you have a series of choices you can make. Like you can go right or left, or maybe there's a different path as well, like down the middle. And the left one feels the lightest to you. And you're like, oh, what will that be like if I choose that? Or what will my life be like in 5 years or in the future if I choose that? And then, and I'm borrowing that question. We'll talk about that in a second. So maybe the left one is feels the lightest, like, you make that one, and that leads you to another series of choices, and can you make the lightest choice from there? Whereas if you're kinda like, "Well, I'll choose what's light this time," or, "I kinda want, this thing over here. It doesn't really feel the lightest, but I want it, so I'm gonna do it anyways. Oh, that feels heavier and constricted. Oh, oops. Well, I guess I'll choose a slightly lighter choice next time," and it kinda just meanders, and it's okay if you do that. It's your life. You can choose whatever you'd like to choose. It's more like this is recommending that there's a path of optimal lightness for you, or a series of choices you can make like every day or throughout the month or just in general, as you're approaching your life, that as you keep making those choices for lighter, it keeps creating greater and things keep getting lighter, and it just completely shifts the trajectory of your world potentially if you keep choosing that. And there's kind of something else they'd like me to say, so I'm gonna sit with them and make sure I'm getting to what they'd like me to say, and not just that here. So the other part of this that's key and important is you are on the trajectory to lightness, is what I'm getting. I'm getting that's for everybody here, which is great. It's like over time with like any healing you're going through, with any maybe if you're even like releasing a lot, or purging, it's like you're preparing for lightness. You're getting rid of the old energies and maybe stuck energies that are in the way or were in the way of you having a lighter experience. If you're releasing a lot, or what's the word people use, purging. So I would be open to a lighter experience and be open to changes that bring lightness. I'd invite it in. Keep choosing lightness like we talked about earlier, and that's going to create your best path at least over time is what I'm getting. As you invite lightness in, you become lightness, you live lightness, you choose lightness. And what I hear overall is like that is the way the world is going. And again, it might not seem like it right now. However, you're not looking 100 years down the path. You're looking at the news from yesterday, okay, is something they're kind of pointing out for those of you who might be fighting me on this, or who might be upset I'm even saying it, which is very interesting to me that you'd be upset that I'm saying that. Um, so, what else would be for that to be to say here? Just know that I'm getting that it is the trajectory, even if you don't think so. So, and again, they're saying it again for some reason, like invite it in. Okay. So we're gonna move on to number two here, unless there's something else we need to get to here. Yep. So just know we are on a trajectory where things are supposed to get lighter, which is great here. I'll tell you a quick story actually. I remember there was a time in my life where there was something I was watching. It was probably from Lee Harris, and he was talking about like, oh, there's this kind of part where I think this was a couple of years ago, but like the second half of the year is a lot lighter and things keep getting lighter as opposed to like kind of what people have been gone through in the past. And I really felt that personally as well in my life. And that really did hold true with the trajectory and the way this thing played out. Things played out over time where things kept getting lighter over time. And this message, what I'm hearing, is kind of carrying that tradition. It's kind of maybe a nod in some ways to that time period, but that might not be the perfect way to say it, where it's like, hey, this is possible for you, and this is what's coming, and this is the trajectory we're on. So, can you keep choosing what's light and keep inviting it in and keep heading in that direction? I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself a lot with that one. So, number two here, they're giving me the message dream big this month. So, I'll read what came through ahead of time. How many of you have shut down your dreams because you do not think they can become a reality? It is time to shift your beliefs so that you see your dreams as possible. If you are not already there, of course. As in if you don't already believe your dreams are possible, or you don't already, perceive that's possible in some way and are open to it being possible, can you, excuse me, begin to open to the possibility of your dreams coming true, even your big dreams. So for those of you who are there, like you know it's possible, you feel it's possible, you believe it's possible, maybe you even feel them coming in, which would be great. It is time to keep putting work into your dreams. And that's just the word that came through. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be like everything's hard and hard work. And if you're not working hard 24 hours a day in the grind set machine, and if you're not sleeping more than, oh my gosh, oh my god, you know what I'm kind of getting to or alluding to with some of that here. It doesn't have to be all hard work. Like, what if it can be fun and joyful? What are the possibilities for that? Where maybe you have ease with moving towards it. And I'm not promising it's all going to be easy. I'm saying what are the possibilities that could be available to you for you to have ease with that because it's probably possible. And anyways, but you might still have to put some work into it in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Uh, at the same time, so much more is possible for you all than you realize, and you can bring it in. You can bring those high possibilities in for you, those vast possibilities in for you in the best ways. So dream big, play big, invite in the big. It's time to stop playing small if you have been playing small. Okay. So I realize I might have meandered through that a little bit. So can you dream big and play with that and sit with the energy of that and begin to magnetize it in more because the world actually needs this is going to sound really interesting, but here's what I'm hearing. The world actually needs more of your dreams coming true and more of you moving towards that instead of thinking it's not possible or delaying it or um, moving towards something you don't really actually, it's not something you'd really want or like to have, but you like think it's safe, but maybe it kind of actually isn't really as safe as secure as it seems. And trust your intuition on it as well. Okay. But the universe is calling you forward to something and is at least inviting you to play with like, what if your dreams came true or what if your dreams could come true? And like, what's possible with that for you that maybe you haven't even allowed yourself to think is possible, and as you play with it and invite in those possibilities, you're kind of opening up timelines for yourself as long as you're like moving towards it too on some level, but at least you're sitting with possibilities instead of like, oh, I can't do, yeah, well, I can't, the kind of constriction type of thing, or you're playing with possibilities instead of fear. So, anyways, the second part of this, dream big and allow that to magnetize more towards you. So that's kind of one of the keys here is like, will you allow yourself to dream big and just like sit in the energies of that and sit with like, well, what would it be like if my dreams came true? And then sit in the energies of that and be like, oh, that feels amazing. Or maybe you'll make adjustments if you ask that and like the dreams you had in mind don't feel as good. You're like, oh, like, what would feel better actually? What would be like a really much better experience for me if this came true? So dream big, move towards it. The universe would like to give to you. The universe would like what is best for you always. It's never like out to get you or out to like tank your life and make you afraid and make you feel bad and all that stuff. All that's just kind of hoopla. So, how can you work with the universe to make your dreams come true and like maybe really vision and play with that more than you have been? Anything else on that before we move on here? I'll say it one more time very clearly. It's really important you're moving towards your dreams, even if it's in like a small way right now. Okay. If you have a lot going on. Okay. And if you're someone who is more on the floor and you're just like, I'm just trying to be okay. If you're struggling with bills or whatever it is, like, okay, allow yourself to dream and allow yourself to vision and maybe manifest. And maybe it's more like, do what you need to do for yourself right now and then invite in the higher possibilities. And as the opportunities to maneuver towards those show up, you can do that. But even if your dream, well, let me see what they'd like to say it. Even if your dream is just like you'd like to be better, you'd like to be feeling better in life, great, move towards that. It doesn't matter if it seems smaller compared to someone else's, okay? That's perfect for you. Number 3 here, boundaries with the self, boundaries with others. So this month, boundaries are going to come into focus. If you have been working on boundaries lately or have previously gotten to a good place with boundaries where they are solid, you won't need to worry, and this month won't bother you so much with that. If you have not been paying attention to your boundaries, you will be forced to pay attention this month so you are better able to bring in what you'd like to have and so that you can have a better experience. Pay attention to your boundaries with yourself and boundaries with others. Excuse me, the better boundaries that you have, the better your life can be. You are worthy of healthy boundaries. So I'm going to repeat the last line. The better the boundaries you have, the better your life can be. You are worthy of healthy boundaries. And I feel like most of you are going to be good with this one. There are a select few or like a group among you who might struggle with this one a little bit. And the best way to not struggle with this one is to maybe review your past and review like, where haven't you had boundaries that could help you so much? Like, is it with a parent? Is it with a friend? Is it with a lover? Is it with yourself? And so if you're focused on boundaries and having like optimal healthy boundaries for you, it's really going to prepare you for a great future, and you're going to have better connections and friendships and relationships in your world, and you're going to be happier, and like that alone is worth it, honestly. Because in order to have the higher quality connections, it's helpful if you have the healthy boundaries. Because the people who aren't worth having around, like, they'll be the ones who get mad and stay mad that you have boundaries, and they'll leave. And the people worth having around, they'd probably respect your boundaries anyways, because they respect you and they honor you, uh, at least enough that they're not gonna desire to take from you if it's and like do things that are harmful to you or that aren't in your best interest, if you don't have a boundary. So ideally, you'd have people around you who would not wish to do any harm to you, or would be conscious and aware enough to not take too much or do anything that would harm you, whether you have the boundaries or not. However, it's better to have them just in case and in general and for your self development, anyways. So keep that in mind. As far as like boundaries with yourself, that can be things like having a bedtime, that can be things like not eating 12 cakes every day, that can be things like doing the things you need to do for yourself as far as like movement or exercise or whatever you'd like to say. It can be sometimes like having boundaries with yourself, it's like it's not calling into work sometimes when you want to, but it doesn't really make sense to, it doesn't really feel intuitively like the right move to do so, but you kind of just want to. And can you show up anyways? Sometimes boundaries with yourself is doing things we don't necessarily, it's not like what we really would like to do, but it's the best thing for us. And the thing is, like, if you would see the future it would create, you'd probably do it. So maybe you don't, what would be a good example here? Maybe you don't desire to have a bedtime and you're kind of still stuck in the 3-year-old version of you who hates bedtimes, to some degree, if you think about it a little bit. And you kind of sit with it and you look at the future it would create if you had the bedtime. You'd be like, oh, wait, I'd be much more regimented. I'd probably feel better because I'm getting enough sleep every night. I'd be healthier. It would set up my schedule a lot better. I could plan a lot better for things. Okay, I see how this would create a better, healthier, more vibrant life for me, as opposed to the train wreck of sleep schedule I've been dealing with, in the past however long you've been dealing with it. In the example, of course, not that you all deal with that. So that's like one example of self boundaries. It kind of leans itself into self care and taking care of yourself, and in a sense, giving yourself the chance to create your best life with what you're doing every day or consistently here. So another thing that came through here, approach your boundaries intuitively, especially for those of you who have your intuition honed in. You know how you work with that. You channel, work with your guides. You could ask, like, hey, where do I need boundaries more? Where would having more boundaries serve me right now? And how can I implement that? Maybe even energetic boundaries is something that would be good for you to work on. And maybe having a regimen to assist you with energetic boundaries would be really helpful for you if you're someone who's really energetically sensitive and you're having a tough time moving for the world. I'd look into that, energetic boundaries for sure. Mm, Anything else with that? So the next part, boundaries is not the message they said here. Boundaries will be tested if you do not have strong boundaries. Is pretty much what they mentioned with that one. So if you don't have strong boundaries right now, you might start to notice people pushing in certain ways. And if you already have the strong boundaries, it probably won't bother you because you're like, okay, I've dealt with this before. Nope, we're not giving you all my money today, for example, or we're not doing this thing that I know is going to go down a road that I'm not happy and it feels heavy if we do that. So I'm just going to say no. Or, for me, what I love about being a channeler, and I don't lie about this ever, but what I love about being a channeler is if someone asks me to do something or to go out and my guides are like, no, don't do that. I could very easily just say like, sorry, the guides are saying no. But I never lie about it. I'm always straight up with people when it when it comes to that, because the integrity thing is important to me, and especially when you do this work, like being honest and having integrity to the best of your ability with the messages you're delivering, even for you, is it can really make a difference. So, however, it makes it easy to say no. Or even if you don't channel, but you feel the energies of how things are going to go, and you're like, oh, it's going to feel heavy to do that. You could be like, I'm sorry. I feel like that's not going to be the best move for me right now. I really, require something else, or just find a way to say no that works for you, and it's going to be really helpful. The other thing was like, for some reason they mentioned that self-care is going to help boundaries. Now let's say with what they meant with that before I open my mouth on what that's about here. So the more you're taking care of yourself, the more you're recognizing, honoring, seeing the value of you, the less you're going to put yourself in circumstances that are circumstances that aren't the best for you, if you know what I'm saying. Circumstances that would be harmful to you or take from you too much. So, can you see the value of you? Can you take care of yourself like you are valuable and see where that leads you? Okay. There was like a quote that came through. Actually, they don't want me to share that, so I'm not going to share that. So, we're going to move on to number 4. I hope that makes sense here. Just make sure you're practicing healthy boundaries and keeping them firm this month and probably beyond. Number 4. So this is about not limiting yourself for others, and I'll read this here. It doesn't matter what other people want or desire. I'm probably going to have some like nuance that we get into after I read this, by the way. There might be some caveats. I remember channeling this through and seeing how people might take this a certain way and get huffy. But let me read this. It doesn't matter what other people want or desire. It doesn't matter what other people want or desire for you. It is time to have boundaries and create the life you desire and move towards that, regardless of what others want or desire, or maybe even want or desire from you. If you are holding your dreams up for other people, you are wasting your life. If you are constantly checking to see if others would like the choices you are making, you are wasting your life. Your life does not belong to other people. Your life belongs to you. Are you going to waste your life on other people's desires, or are you going to craft your own desires in life? The choice is yours. So the caveat here, where I thought people might take this a weird way potentially, let's see. If you are holding your dreams up for other people, you are wasting your life. So this doesn't mean like if you have children, you just don't take care of your children or don't honor your responsibilities with your children or something like that. It's more like an example I could give for holding your dreams up for other people. It might be like, oh, well, my mom's Christian and I do intuitive work. And if I'm really successful, that's gonna really potentially shatter her reality as a Christian because she thinks that only Christian people can be successful. And it'd be God wouldn't let someone who's intuitive be successful. So if I'm successful, it's going to change that for her. It's like, okay, your mom's reality is not your responsibility. Like upholding your mom's desires and reality and responsibility for you, for herself, not your responsibility. Your world's your responsibility. The life you'd like to have is your responsibility. Okay. So it's kind of like not holding your dreams up for other people's opinions or what they think of what you'd like to move towards, what your dreams are, etc. It's not holding yourself up for other people's jealousies or because your friend's afraid of you leaving them behind if you get super successful or anything like that. It's like your life is for you. And it sounds a little bit intense, but the way my guides are bringing it through, which might just be the way this crowd needs to hear it, is like screw them, and not literally, not screw them over, not be awful to them. It's kind of like maybe you need to hear it that way so you'll actually listen and stop putting everyone else before your life experience. And then before you know it, you're at the end of your life and you die and you're like, well, I didn't experience anything that I wanted to experience. Like, don't let that be you. Like, like all those people are going to die sometime too. And you're here for you to some capacity. Your life isn't owned by everyone else. So don't limit yourself or your life for other people. It's a waste of your time. The other part of this here, if you are constantly checking to see if others would like the choices you are making, you are wasting your life. And again, this doesn't mean like starving starving the people you're responsible for and like doing things that are really chaotic and like difficult on your family right now. Like there's probably a more harmonious way to make the shifts over time so that you can have what you'd like to have in a way that doesn't become super destructive in a negative way for people you're responsible for. If you have children, for example, or something like that, it's more like checking for people's approval, is probably more the direction this is going. Excuse me. Like you don't need everyone's approval to go after what you'd like to have and have the things you'd like to have. And if you had everything you'd like to have, I'm going to be honest, people probably will judge you for it. Like if you'd like to have all your dreams come true and be whatever that have whatever that is. People might judge you for that. If you like a nice car, people might judge you for having a nice car and make all these projections up. And you have to kind of be okay with that and be like, it doesn't matter what they think. It's really irrelevant and it doesn't mean anything. And it doesn't make what they think real just because they think it or have those ideas in their head or stories. So don't waste your life for other people, waiting for other people's approval. Any of that is kind of what this is talking about here. So the other part of this, the universe is pretty much saying, screw everyone who doesn't want you to succeed for any reason, win big is also the way they, and again, that is what I heard. That is what they said. I know that sounds intense and people don't always seem to like when my spirit guides get intense, but are you going to hear them if they don't? In one of the more recent episodes of the Channeling Swords podcast, episode 13, I know they got pretty intense and said things that don't have to be controversial, but to some people are controversial. And I know people misunderstood that episode. Like I just know that they did. Like I was getting that they did. Um, so I guess I'll kind of leave it at that. And I'm okay with that. I'm just bringing through the messages that I'm guided to bring through. Um, but let's just put it this way. Like your life's not about other people or pleasing other people or getting everyone else's approval. It's about what's true for you and what you'd, to a certain extent, like what you'd like to have. And some of you might feel like that doesn't totally make sense to you because you're like, well, I feel like I'm called to help people. It's like, great. That's a part of your mission. And yeah, that's part of it. You know, that's true. I'm not saying be awful to everyone else. I'm not saying don't help other people because of course your mission, especially here, probably entails doing something that's going to help other people for many of you here. And what would be the best way to say this here? It also doesn't mean limit your life for other people. You know what I'm saying? So that's the caveat they're trying to make. Number 5 here, unless there's something else they want me to say about that before we move on. You guys get it. Some of you might be mad and that's fine. Let's move on here. They want me to skip 5 and go to number 6. So we're going to do that and then we'll jump back to 5 at a certain point here. So number 6, mysteries unveiled, major surprises, major redirection here. So this kind of came through like for the channel device in the week I had for the last week of November. So it's kind of just continuing. And I believe the message in that also had to do with like December. So we'll talk about that later if that's relevant. Anyways, there are a lot of surprises coming around this month. Surprise turns in world events even, surprise turns in personal worlds, surprise turns for many in general. Keep in mind this can be positive or a positive turnaround that has been prayed for. Not all of it will be negative. This can be totally of the light. So be mindful of judging it before you know what it is, because it could be the best thing yet for you. Or maybe for the world even. Healthy surprises are on the way for many in this crowd. So I'm not going to promise all of this is going to be glorious and grand and the best surprises ever. For many of you, it will be, is what I'm hearing, which is great. It's just no expectations is what I'd say, okay? I would invite the best. I'd invite the highest and best possibilities with these surprises. I would maybe even consider asking for it and manifesting it the way you'd like it to go. But then I'd hold it loosely and I'd allow the universe to do what it would like to do and trust this doesn't have to be a bad thing. Even if like everyone else judges it as bad off the bat, because they're not looking at the future or what it's creating. They're sucked into the story they're being sold about what's happening and what it means that might not be actually true, okay, or totally true. So just allow the surprises, know that's coming in. Major redirection is a really important part of this. And again, we kind of talked about it at the end of November with channel messages on the last week in November, essentially. And that's just kind of continuing for the next couple months here, where there's a lot of redirection, a lot of surprises that bring you clarity and awareness that cause you to change course or that cause the course to turn, whether it's happening to you or you gain clarity and you're the cause of the change, you know, with the choices you're making. Either way, it's all meant to lead you to a lighter path, to your best path potentially. So again, I wouldn't judge this right now. So anything else on that before we keep going? So ride the waves of change, all will be well is another thing they brought through with this one, as well as redirection is moving people towards their best path. So there we go here. So now we're going to go back to number 5 here. There might be a little bit more here. So with the mysteries unveiled part for number 6, there might be a lot of things that have been hidden to you and to this crowd, maybe even to the world, that are really coming to light in December and beyond is what I'm getting. Like through 2025, even through 2026, through 2027. So there's a lot of clarity rising even over the next week from, the first week I post this or maybe from whenever you're seeing this. And it's meant to kind of keep rising. And when we know what's true, we can make the best choices for us, or we have a better potential to make the best choices for us, as opposed to being kept in the dark or being in la la land thinking one thing, but something else is true. And then when the truth is unveiled, it's like really shocking that we went all the way into la la land, in the first place. So, what is true will set you free. So, I'd really allow these mysteries to be unveiled and be okay with it. And do your best to be an allowance of what is unveiled to be true to you over the next month or two and just shift accordingly. Okay. And, for some reason, I'm being guided to say, like, it's better to hold things loosely sometimes. Sometimes it's better not to have like a major opinion that we've decided ourselves as opposed to a channeled messages that we've gotten from source or an intuition we have. Like people who have a lot of major like opinions and like decisions they make, which and by decision I mean something where it's like they just like decide something's true without really getting the clarity or intuitive knowing or channel guidance on it. They just like decide things and then they attach to it and then they have to be right. And I'm just like, what? Why? But anyways, it to me that doesn't make a lot of sense because like that opinion could just be entirely wrong. Like if it's a political opinion, not to bring politics into it, or if it's opinion about how the world works or how the economy works. It's like, did you actually get clarity on that, or did you just form an opinion around something without getting to what's true? Like it just boggles my mind, like because that could just be a random block that you have to what's true coming in, and you making the best moves for yourself regarding this. So it's really interesting to me when people just like decide they're right without anything to back it up and then just live that way. Like it's very interesting to me. Anyways, I find a lot more value for me in like what is true and what does my intuition tell me and what's true for me and what did my spirit guides, the angels and source tell me and tell me is the best way to operate and things like that. What do I get instead of what do I think? Is I guess a way I'll put it to you. So, um, you might consider one message that's coming through is almost consider staying away from or having boundaries with people who have strong opinions and they'll never change for any reason because they're just kind of stuck is kind of what I'm getting. And it's not your job to save them or convince them they're wrong or change their mind. You can just kind of be an allowance to them and let them be there and move on to happiness while they choose whatever they choose. It's not your job to save them. Okay. Um, Anything else before we move on? Number 5 here, this one's cool, light wave. Will you be a part of the light wave or will you drown? Sounds a bit intense, so let's get into it here. There are massive waves of light and ascension hitting the earth right now. You have a choice on whether you will contribute to the light or whether you will resist it. Those who resist will begin to struggle. Those who will allow the light in and allow themselves to be the light will succeed. How can you become more of the light on earth so you can become more a part of the light wave rather than drowning in it or struggling with it? So I'm sure some of you just get it. Some of you are probably like, what do I do so I don't struggle with the light wave? And I did ask, like, how can the people tuning into this align with the light wave instead of struggling with it or contribute to the light instead of struggling with it? Um, one thing that's coming to me right now actually is being one of those people that's more like, oh, well, I wonder what's true. And what am I getting intuitively or what am I getting channeled wise to the best of your ability with wherever you're at right now? Don't force yourself instead of one of those people who's just like stuck in the opinion and what they decide is right when they haven't really got the clarity or proof or the knowing to back that up. That's going to help right then and there because you're not all of a sudden resisting because you have this opinion and you have to prove everything that goes against this opinion wrong. You could say in some ways, and I know people are going to potentially misunderstand what I'm saying with this, so let me explain it here. It could see that as maybe more of like a dark. I don't mean dark as in like the forces of darkness, dark way of approaching things because you're not really letting the light in to show you what's true. You're clenched around an idea that may or may not be true, and that doesn't really have anything to do with awareness or consciousness or your divine guidance or intuition. That's just like a mental thing you're doing and like wrapping personality around And then maybe you're even calling that your personality when it has nothing to do with you as far as who and what you actually are. It's just an opinion, you know? Um, so maybe that's even one example. I know that doesn't mean like the forces of darkness, but that does lack a certain amount of awareness and consciousness when you approach it that other way. Um, Especially like highest consciousness, you know. Anyways, what are some other ways? How can the people tuning in align with the light wave instead of struggling with it? So here are some of the things they brought through. What are the things that light you guys up? I'm getting to recommend that you guys move towards that more often. Like, what are the things that bring you joy? What are the things that bring you peace? What are the things that bring you a lighter experience? Not drugs, by the way. I mean, if you have something you're doing for medical reasons, that's different. Legal disclaimer: I'm not a doctor, but not probably not recreational drugs to any capacity. Nothing like wrong per se if you're choosing that, especially from a judgment standpoint. It's just like, is that really the light? No, not really. Anyways, what are the things that you guys are guided to do each day? And are you guys doing those things? Like, are you following your intuition with, like, oh, here's a routine that would help me? Or, oh, if I do this every day, it's going to start moving me towards this thing I'd like to have. And that's what my guide said to do. Like, are you doing the things you know are going to help you? You know, is one thing they're talking about as well. So another thing, do you have strong boundaries with things that diminish your light? Like if you're fighting with the opinion people over here and you're really struggling with that, maybe it's time to step away and not have that be a part of your reality where you have to struggle with them. You could just live your life. And you know, as far as like other things that could be, as far as examples, I want to see if they'll give me more here. Like, if you have, like, friends or people in your life that always complain and come from a dark place, maybe in some way, shape, or form, and they bring you down, and maybe you've been trying to save them or do your best to change their opinion or change them so that they can be more the light and have a better life, and maybe it's time to let go and let them be how they are, and you can just work more on being the example and having the life you'd like to live, and, you're not struggling with things that diminish potentially diminish you or waste your energy or things like that. It's also just really kind of having boundaries with things that would otherwise drag you down or keep you from being your best self. Like all those different things is kind of what they're talking about. So maybe sit with this one, munch on it, see what percolates for you as far as what all that could be, you know, what could help you regarding that as far as like you having strong boundaries with things that diminish your light or keep you from being the light that you be. So next, are you moving towards your best life with the resources that you have, or at least doing your best to do so? Like, and it can be with ease. It doesn't have to be a difficult struggle to make your best life happen right now or anything like that. It's more like, are you doing your best to consciously move towards your best life? Is pretty much what they're talking about here. Mm, are you spreading light or are you otherwise consciously making the world a better place somehow, even if it is just through like kindness to someone or smiling at someone on the street you're guided to or something along those lines? Again, it doesn't have to be crazy or difficult or this huge, like, oh my God, I need to create this gigantic invention that changes the world and blasts people with healing and then da 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 da. If you do that, great. That's awesome. It's also just like, are you doing your part? What's the best way to say this? Are you doing what you feel called to do to spread light in your corner of the world with the puzzle piece that you play? And you don't have to save the world. You don't have to take on a bunch of burdens. You don't have to go crazy with this one at all. It's like, are you spreading light? Are you bringing more light and high vibrations to people? Next, are you treating yourselves kindly and taking care of yourselves? Is something I'm getting to say as well. Do you care about yourselves? Are you caring for yourself with the actions you take and things you do? Something to consider. And the last one that came through ahead of time, are you doing what you need to do for yourselves in an aligned way within reason? So kind of similar to what we just said here. So I feel like in some ways, maybe it's pretty self-explanatory. Maybe I didn't have to go into this as deeply as I did. So if you think of things that are traditionally spreading light, or maybe it's more like light worker type stuff, and maybe not the judgment and projection on what a light worker is and what light work is, which I realize could turn into a whole conversation pretty quickly about like, well, what do you mean? What is the projection and what's the actual thing? Well, I would use your awareness and discernment on that, or maybe that'll be a different video or something like that, because this one's gonna get really long if I start delving into that. Um, Anyways, though, think of what light is to you and like the vibration of light, and how can you have more of that? And how can you bring more of that? And maybe it's like, are you doing your best to get to peace in your world, or more joy in your world, or more appreciation in your world? Maybe you're just looking to like get to a lighter place yourself, you know. I'm getting you guys get it, so I'll trust that will play out the way it needs to, and that message landed in the ways it needed to. The next thing I'll read here, which is like the last part of the number 5 here, the channel messages that came through, is the universe is no longer tolerating darkness where darkness does not belong. So, if you are someone who is somehow cultivating darkness in you, it is going to be purged out. The darkness will be purged out. You have been given a heads up. So, that's very few of you tuning in, okay? It might be as few as like 2 or 3 of you who are. I would hope you're not consciously doing this at all. I would find that pretty ridiculous personally. Uh, However, for some reason, there's this message like darkness isn't holding up anymore, especially within yourselves. Especially if you're someone who's meant to be more light and head in a lighter direction, you're gonna find the heavier and darker things are releasing with ease potentially. You can ask to have ease with that if this is something you feel resonant regarding. And you don't have to judge what darkness is or have a preconceived idea of what it is. You can let it be shown to you by what releases what that is, or by what the universe shows you what that is. Okay. uh but you're gonna have that going, and if you had anything like that happening, so not to worry here. So we already talked about number 6, which was mysteries unveiled, major surprises, major redirections. So we're gonna go to number 7 here, the quantum shift. Things are becoming more quantum and shifting faster. So we kind of spoke about this in a previous video, but it's coming through again. So we'll talk about it again. Like spoken about in channeled advice on the week ahead for the last week of November, things are becoming more quantum in a sense, and changes more easily made. Think of light as something that can flow freely, and as you lighten up, you can make changes with greater ease instead of feeling stuck in heaviness or solidity. Or maybe darkness. The lighter you get, the brighter things get for you and your world and the world. Things are becoming more quantum, so you can shift into your best life with more ease. Don't miss this opportunity. Now is the best time so far to create changes and call in what you desire, even to change yourself, and to become more light. Move towards things you'd like to have. No pressure on it. Just start moving in a direction you'd like to go in small ways that can compound, or do your best with all that. So, I'm really getting now is the time to really start to change your life, even if it's in small ways, even if it's just in what you do every day. And there's an important message they wanted me to get to that I'm going to get to now, actually. And it's like number 11 here. It was like a bonus or like an extra one. So the message with number 11 was like, pray and set intentions every day. It will shift your world. That's all they said. And if you haven't seen the power of this yet or tried this yet, I'd highly recommend giving it a go for maybe this month or maybe the next couple months, where like what happens when you sit down and have a regimen where you set intentions like every day. Set intentions for your day, set intentions for your life ahead, set intentions for the things you're calling in, set intentions for the things you'd like to be every day. It could just be 15 minutes, and maybe you have a list that you've written down, and it could be using all types of different modalities or different things you've heard about. It doesn't just have to be one specific way of doing it. For example, maybe you have a channeled mantra you received to bring in abundance. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this every day. And your guides are like, say it 10 times every day. You're like, okay, so that's part of my regimen. I'm going to say this channeled mantra for abundance 10 times every day. And we're going to see what shifts as I do that, and what resources are brought in, and what opportunities and steps are brought my way to move towards abundance, and what books and different things are brought in that start to generate, either generate it for you or move you towards generating it more. What information comes your way to help you, and start putting those things in place until all that abundance shows up. And maybe you keep doing it just to keep compounding it. Or, like, have you ever tried it where you go like, today's going to be a great day, and then it's just a great day? It's like things like that even too, where you're just like setting the intention and it happens to however much. And if like you keep doing that, it starts to compound and really grow and change the trajectory of your whole world potentially if you keep doing it. So, and sure, there are certain concepts like destiny or like what is your soul here for and things like that. And you can work with that and maybe you can have both, or maybe you can work with your soul like, hey, can we have some of this over here too and see what's possible for you with all that. So you're not stuck per se. But that's one of the things that I'll mention to you in addition to this quantum message. Yeah. So that you have something to maybe grasp onto and use to implement this, at least for starters. Okay. And however you manifest, it's a great time to do that throughout the rest of the year, probably even. It's a great time to just look at what you'd like to shift or what needs to shift and ask for it to shift and maneuver towards that however you know how. Ask for ease with it all because why not? And I guess that's kind of the message, honestly. Anyways, the other thing they added in with this is that things will shift quickly if you're someone who's in a stuck place. Have hope. So we are in a time period where if you have been in a cocoon phase, a lot of the cocoons are falling off. A lot of the forward movement is happening. A lot of the butterflies are birthing and getting ready to take flight and move forward and be their next phase and become the next version of them or whatever and be the brighter version of them. So there's a lot of like the cocoon falling away and a lot of the stuck energies leaving and the stuckness leaving over the next month or two is what I'm getting. Maybe 3. You can give a little bit of time for this one just in case for some of you. But I heard next month or 2, maybe 3. And it's going to be like 4 at the latest with this message. Okay. So 4 months at the latest with this message. I like that message. I think most people don't like being stuck. I think most people like having options and choice. So this is great, is what I'd say here. And I feel like this is just happening. There's nothing you need to do for this one, except that, if you have actions you're guided to take, I would trust those. I wouldn't just be like, well, I said I didn't need to do anything. My guys are saying to do this, but Brandon said not to do anything. No, you being guided to do that is part of it. But I just feel like when I get messages like this, what's the best way to say this? It's just going to happen somehow, whether you're guided to it or it just happens to you or whatever. But it's going to happen, so I'm not too worried about it based on what I'm hearing. Number 8 here, horse spirit animal, making the impossible leap over the next month and year. So this one kind of goes out a bit further than just a month. You're entering into a time where leaps are required, shifts are required. Are you ready to make those leaps? Since things are becoming more quantum and since possibilities are opening up more and more in the coming months and year, it's really time to trust when spirit asks you to leap. It's time to trust when you are called to leap. Okay, so I'm getting there's a lot of leaps of faith this month, a lot of maybe even changing careers is something I'm hearing for maybe a lot of you or a certain number of you are starting to come onto your mind, or you're going to start to see opportunities to start to make the moves to do that. It could be changing, relationships, or maybe it's leaping from being single to like being with someone, in a love life capacity. I heard something interesting, like leaping from being single to getting married. I'm not sure I personally wholeheartedly recommend that from a personal standpoint. However, it's your journey, and that might have meant something different than I took it the way I just heard it and related to you, like, maybe it's like you're single and then you meet someone you're going to marry, or maybe you will leap from being single to being married. It's your life, your choices. You do what's best for you. Anyways, just know there are major leaps of faith on the way. I would take those as you're guided, and what's the best way to say this? I will say as a caveat, like, this doesn't mean like quit your job without a safety net or quit a situation that's really serving you with nothing to fall back on because of this. Like, this is going to make sense, is the way I'm hearing it. Like, the leap is going to make sense. It might be something you would have just found yourself doing anyways, and you'll look at the message and look at that, be like, oh yeah, there's the leap. Okay, I get it. Like, this is something I've been planning on doing for months, or maybe it'll be a surprise too. However, I think, what's the best way to say this here? If you're someone who's like really divinely guided and like intuitively honed in, and you know what your intuition and divine guidance are telling you, and you get the strong message to like quit a job, and your guys are like, no, actually do it, and you double check in and they're like, no, we don't mean like in next months, like we're saying this is something you need to do. Like, that's, even then I slightly recommend, I slightly hesitate even saying this. That could be a different story than just like, you're newer to this and you think you get the message to leave a job and you're like, oh, that means I quit today. And then you're like having a tough time because maybe they were saying like, start looking at other jobs or start thinking, when you're more honed in, you know your process, you know what you're being guided to do, and you can trust that. Okay. if you know what you're about and know that you know what you're about with all that. So that's my caveat with that is don't do negatively drastic things that you're not prepared for with to a certain extent when it comes to like don't just like quit a job if you don't have a safety net, for example. Okay. Number 9 here, they showed me anything else I need to explain before we move on here. You got it. Let's move on. Number 9, they showed me a dragon. So this kind of is, I feel like would be good advice for any period of time. But what do you value and how can you have more of that? So it's time to really take stock of what's valuable in your world, what's valuable to you, and ask for more of it and move towards more of it. And, we have all these messages about like the quantum and setting intentions every day. Like this kind of feels like it makes sense with all that, or you could work with this with that somehow. I didn't say that right, but I'll just keep reading here. So it could be, the things you find valuable or you would like to have more of. It could be money, it could be joy, it could be peace, it could be ease, it could be all of the above and more. When you recognize what is valuable to you, you can have more of what fulfills you and move towards it consciously. You can have more of what brings you joy. You can have more light in your life potentially as well. So, what are the things you find yourself most appreciative and grateful for? What are the things you've traditionally found yourself most grateful and appreciative for in the past? And can you invite in more of those things? So, what are the situations and things you wish would change so you would appreciate them more? And so, they would be something you'd value more. You can have the life you'd like to have that's full of the things you value. Will you create it? Is the question. Will you implement the things you know to do to create it and start with what you know will work, or start with the things at least that you have available to you to start, and the universe can correct you, course correct you, bring in more resources as you get started and as you set those intentions and move the needle somehow, or attempt to move the needle. Start moving the needle for you, I guess, is the way they're having me say it here. It's funny because nope, I'm jumping ahead with what they'd like me to get to. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. I think it's more just like recognizing what's valuable, maybe journal on it, take a note, maybe channel on it if you channel, and really start to appreciate those things where you already have them and start to focus on bringing in more of it so you have more of a life that you value and that fulfills you and brings you more of what you'd like to have. And I think it's important not to lie to ourselves about this as well. I think people really stick themselves when they won't be honest with themselves with what they value or what they'd like to have. For example, what's the best example for me to use here? I think I'm going to use money because I think that's the one that people can get weird around, just based on all the projections and judgments a lot of different people have on money out there, especially when it comes to things like spirituality, which is very interesting. However, mm, the more I've recognized that, what's the best way to say this? I'm so sorry for the pause here, guys. I want to make sure I get this out in a way that's helpful for you. Mm, I noticed that sometimes for me in the past, so this is something I'm getting over. There'd be something I'd like to have, but it didn't line up with maybe what other people I'd known, or maybe what I picked up people projected or judged as being like they didn't think it was like good or like right per se. So for instance, like there's all those weird quotes out there that aren't necessarily even true, like money's the root of all evil, or like oh, that person, they're so pure, they don't do it for the money, or like things like that, which is interesting. And then I'd recognize like when I'd go to ask for certain things, even if I really would like to ask for money, I'd find like a hesitation around asking for money, for example, based on those projections, which again weren't necessarily what was true. They could be very strong opinions based on what other people told them or the stories fed to them that maybe they hadn't worked through yet. And so I would start to catch that and be like, no, wait, when I feel into the energy of what it would be like to have more money, it just feels lighter. It feels like there's more peace. It feels like there's more joy. It feels like I can take care of myself better because I have money. I can be more generous because I have more money to be generous with. And it really just feels way better in every way to have more money than it does to not have money. So I'm going to ask for money. I'm going to really actually directly ask for this and realize this is something that's actually going to change my life for the better and help me to change other people's lives for the better too. And just be more of what I'd like to have. It's going to make my life more of what I'd like to have. So I'm just going to acknowledge that and be straight up with that instead of, judging it like everyone else does, or not everyone else, but other people do, for example. Or Maybe you'd like to judge someone who's sorry, hopefully you wouldn't like to judge anyone. But anyways, maybe you'd like to be with someone you find really attractive, and maybe you have had that before, maybe you haven't, and you find yourself like, oh, but I don't want to be shallow. I don't want to be someone who's only cares about looks or anything like that. Well, I'm sure if you really dug into what was valuable to you, you'd also find that you'd like someone who contributes to your life and makes it better and makes it lighter and it makes things greater for you and adds to your life. You won't just want someone with good looks. But if you find yourself desiring that and wishing you had it, but then feeling stuck in that struggle of like, oh, but other people say it's shallow if I want this, and I want to be someone who's like this, and I want to fit into the projections and judgments of what's right and what's true according to other people, and I said the word true, and maybe that wasn't the best word to use because it's none of that's really true. Those are just projections and judgments. It's like, maybe just acknowledge that. Be like, that's something I'd like to have. And I'm asking for that, even if everyone else would judge it and project on it and call me a terrible person for it. Who cares what they think? It's time for you to maybe acknowledge what you'd actually like to have it and realize it's not wrong to ask for those things or desire to have those things or to have those things. So can you be real with yourself with what you'd like to have and what you value? And it doesn't mean so for example, I feel like this is gonna get you guys in a good way, some of you. When you have just because you like money doesn't mean you can't also be pure and can't also do things that are good for the world with what you do for money. You can't also, have the other qualities like that are awesome. Like, oh, you can still be high vibrational and pure and highest connected and be intuitive and be really facilitate a lot of healing for people, bring a lot of light to the world, and have a lot of money and make a lot of money doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, unless you're judging it as wrong, which it doesn't make it wrong. You're just judging it as wrong. And you're just kind of sticking yourself potentially when you do that. So that's kind of what I mean is it's not like one or the other. You can definitely have both where it's like, oh, yeah, I'd really like to date someone who's attractive and a really great person. And maybe there's nothing wrong with me for desiring that per se. So yeah, I'll add that into the conversation. I wasn't expecting to go there, but it kind of showed up a little bit. I thought maybe it's a good time to talk about that and with this conversation because I think it'd be really great for you to be honest with yourself and vulnerable with yourself fully about what you value. You don't have to tell anyone else. This could be just for you, just in a little note on your phone that no one ever sees. Okay, but what do you value, and can you have more of that? What will it take for you to have more of that? Okay. Number 10 here, work on worthiness. For those of you who hear, okay, I'm going to read this, and this is what they said. Okay. For those of you who hear our words and go, yeah, that's great and all, but it's not for me. As far as like having your dreams come true, or maybe it's having money, or it's having someone you're attracted to, or something else that you'd like to have. It's time to clean up your mindset. Things are absolutely possible for you, and it's time to shift the beliefs and worthiness issues that might keep you from what you'd like to have. What kind of a life is a life where you think you can't have what you'd like to have? And what are you creating for yourself with your energy and your magnetism when you think you can't have what you'd like to have and come from that place? Please don't come from that place, okay? It's time to work on you to have what you'd like to have. That's the key. Is it's time to work on you to have what you'd like to have. And again, since things are becoming more quantum, what I'm being shown, what I'm getting is it's going to be easier to shift this now more than ever, and it's just going to keep getting easier potentially as well, which is great. I'll keep reading. Anywhere you find you have unworthiness issues, dig into that this month. It will pay dividends over the long haul. Anywhere you find you feel unworthy of something great, see how you can shift that and begin to shift the belief that that is, or begin to facilitate healing around that to shift it and begin to recognize you are worthy, and any stories that you aren't worthy are a lie, essentially. So it's kind of opening to the possibilities and getting rid of the blocks, if you will, to those possibilities. So you can really shine and have it all, I guess. And so that's what I had for you ahead of time. I want to see if there's anything else I'd like to bring through for you before we start to close this one out here. Nope, they're saying I really beat it to a pulp here. So I hope that helped and resonated to whatever was for your highest good, helps to move the needle in your world, contributed to you. And I really hope this helps make your life greater in the long haul and this month, of course. If you'd ever like to go further with my work, you can go to brandonhbloom.com. You can see all my offerings there. One of them is the Let's Go Higher membership. And that's a membership I have with a ton of channel content in it that's there from the past, as well as there's a lot of new channel content that gets added every month. There's a channeled messages on the month ahead for December, and each month that's geared towards the members. So it gets a little bit more honed in and geared towards, the members specifically in that group than, maybe the YouTube one does. I fully intend both of them to be helpful and accurate, by the way. It's I do my best with both of them. You know, whether it's free or paid work, my intention is I show up and do the highest and best that I can, the most effective I can, do what's for the highest good with it. That's my intention, at least. But anyways, there's also a lot of more that goes into that. There's channeled guided meditations that go out every month, new ones every month. There's a full channel mode session that goes out every month that, if you watch the Channeling Source podcast, you've seen an example of the full channel mode session. You know, and then maybe it's a slightly different because Kat's not there asking me questions for the full channel mode sessions for the membership. We could add that in that way. We could change it if you guys were like, yeah, we'd love that. But yeah, and then we also do a Q and channel day live session every month where members submit questions, and I will channel my spirit guides, the angels and source on those questions. And usually there's like a full channel mode session at the end of that too. So that's kind of it. I mean, you can just look at my website to see what else I have, available. There's plenty of other stuff. I'm wishing you well. I hope December is wonderful for you, and may a lighter and brighter path for all of us unfold December and the year ahead in 2025 and beyond, because why limit it? Okay. Take care.